How's it going, my little Peters? Hope you all had a good 4th of July. I certainly did, and that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about today in this video. Now, before I begin, I will be live streaming real soon over at twitch.tv/raging_Peter. It's on the screen, and there's a link in the description below. So head on over there and leave a follow so you never miss a live stream. If you enjoy these types of videos, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future uploads. Now back to the main topic of today's video, which took place on the 4th of July. To get things started, a buddy of mine, we'll call him Cliff, hit me up on Snapchat about a week beforehand to ask me if I was doing anything to celebrate the 4th of July. Now, I'm not one to usually celebrate on the 4th. Maybe I'll get together with my parents to let off some fireworks, but usually it's like any other normal day besides it sounding like a fucking war zone outside. Now get this, I recently tripped with Cliff maybe 2 weeks prior to this. This was his first time taking shrooms, though he had prior experience with other psychedelics, for example acid. So it wasn't exactly his first walk in the park, but it definitely was a different scenario for him. So this time would be his second time ever taking shrooms. Cliff had only dosed 2.5 grams, and this time he planned on taking 3.5. So I was pretty pumped as I was looking forward to tripping together with someone again. So of course I was like, bet, I'll definitely come through and trip with you. So the 4th finally rolled around. I got off work at about 8 p.m. and I talked to my cousin, we'll call him Lewis, and he decided he was going to join us and dose some shrooms as well. It also came to my attention that Cliff invited 2 of his buddies, but they were only going to smoke and drink, so they were essentially trip sitters. So anyways, it's 8 p.m. I just got off work. I went ahead and picked up Lewis, and we drove back to my apartment, which is actually a town over from where Lewis lives and I work at. So we got back to my place and got things situated to get ready to go. So then I texted Cliff, who lives only 11 apartment units away from me, which is clutch as fuck, and let him know that I'm home and ready to get this function going. Meanwhile, as we were waiting on Cliff and the other 2 to swing by, I pull out my shrooms. Now I have a classic tried and true way of taking shrooms, so you for one, don't taste them as much, and 2, get a better trip. This method, as I mentioned before in a video I did of my most intense trip ever, was to take however many shrooms you were dosing, stick them in the magic bullet, and then fill half the cup with a strawberry banana smoothie and top it off with orange juice. So I went ahead and got my cousin a shroom smoothie going. He dosed about 2 grams, but his dose was something a little different, as was mine. He got the remainder of what shrooms were left off my plug, which was really a bunch of crumble and a few caps. Although it was all very potent, so really he probably did close to like 5 or 6 grams worth in the end. What I dosed was actually 5 grams split up into 2 pill capsules of the same stuff. Now, I had never taken shrooms via pill capsules before, so I didn't know how the come up was going to be or anything. Like, I didn't know how long it was going to take, how long the come up was going to last. I had no idea. Nevertheless, I downed my 2 shrooms pills and washed them down with a cup of OJ. Now, at this point, we were just waiting for them to get here. I'd grabbed a bottle of whiskey from the liquor store just before picking Lewis up. God damn, that shit was good. It's called, like, Old Smoky. It's bottled in Tennessee. It was cookie dough flavored. It was pretty freaking good. I just picked that bottle up before picking up Lewis from his house, so of course I busted that bottle out, and Lewis and I started taking swigs out the bottle as well as smoking our dab pens. Basically, the idea was we needed to make sure we definitely had a blast. So about 15 minutes passed by, Lewis and I were feeling very crossed already, and Cliff and the boys finally showed up. As it actually turns out, I actually knew the 2 people Cliff brought with him. One guy I knew from high school, we'll call him Caden. Caden was a pretty chill dude. We never really hung out outside of school or anything, but we would talk in class, and overall, we were pretty cool. Now, the other guy, I actually met in a group chat Cliff invited me to on Snapchat, and we'll call him Charlie. The only reason I realized who he was, I shit you guys not, was from his Snapchat Bitmoji, because on God, they look the exact same. Once I put 2 and 2 together, I asked Charlie, yo, did I sell you a GTX 1660 graphics card by any chance? He was like, holy fuck, that was you? So, it was pretty cool that I finally met that guy IRL. But anyways, we're all chilling at my apartment for a few before we head out. Cliff went ahead and brought over his shrooms so I could make him a shroom smoothie as well. So I went ahead and whipped that up for him. Lewis and I drank some more just before leaving, and man, I still feel like I needed more to drink. Considering everything that happened in this story, I wish I would have drank more. I feel like I needed to drink more. Our plan originally was to go to the elementary school in the town Lewis lives in to watch the fireworks show that starts at 10 p.m. Cliff decided he wanted to drive, which made me a bit nervous because the last time I was in a car with Cliff, he drove like a maniac. But regardless, we all head out and get into Cliff's car to head over to watch the fireworks. By the time we left, Lewis and I were already starting to feel the come up. Not to mention, we were already crossed. So during the 15-minute drive to this town, Lewis and I were pretty much starting to trip balls. At this point, we were all just in the car bullshitting, having a good time, and we all look over at Cliff and we noticed that he started to feel the come up about halfway through the drive. But he handled it well and drove appropriately. Just as a side note, this is going to be very important in the story later. I had taken a piss just before leaving my apartment, but there is something with shrooms that make me piss like a goddamn racehorse. Just as we were getting into town, I started to feel like I might have to take a leak later, but at the time it was nothing to worry about. Anyways, Cliff decided to park at his parents' house in their driveway so we could just walk over to the school, which was only a few minutes away. So we all got there and we all got out of the car and started to walk towards the elementary school. And man, was I a bit fucked up. But the thing is, when I get fucked up, I can actually still function pretty much like a normal human being and not act like a dumbass. This will become more relevant as we continue on, but we started walking down the street through this neighborhood to get to the school. We all eventually get there, and holy fuck, there's a ton of people at this event. It felt like the whole town was here. At this point, we were just looking for a place to sit down and chill to watch the fireworks, which they shot off from the high school. After navigating through this swarm of people, we found ourselves on this hill and we sat our asses down. It was about 9:45 at this point, so we had about 15 minutes before the fireworks started. By this time, Cliff, Lewis, and myself were definitely tripping pretty good. I'd say perfect for the fireworks, but not perfect for how many fucking people there was around us. It was mass chaos, dude. There were these kids running around, which I'm not complaining about it, of course, they were having a good time and all. But I kid you not, there was this one kid that was just out there being a goon starting shit. It was hilarious. He was running around saying things like fuck you and stuff like that and just talking trash to other kids. But eventually I'm pretty sure he got into a fight or something. There was some commotion behind us and then I didn't see or hear anything about him again. But anyways, there was just so many people. Lewis and I were kind of out of our comfort zone, I was pretty chill, but only because I drank more than he did, I think. The other three were just conversing amongst themselves while Lewis and I were bullshitting about everything. We were all having a hoot, but goddamn motherfucker, I had to take the fattest piss of my life, and it was getting pretty rough. 10 o'clock finally came around and the show started. It was pretty much the same shit every year, except this time we got to experience them with psychedelics. And these shrooms were no laughing matter. They made the fireworks appear to me as they were very close and more visually astounding. It was fucking awesome. The fireworks didn't last very long, only until about 10:30, so they were over before we knew it. So now our plan was to take a walk. But remember that piss I was talking about earlier? Now it's gotten to the point where I gotta go, urgently, right now. So I was like, boys, I gotta find somewhere to take a piss. And their idea was to go to this gas station that was about a 15-minute walk away. Lewis and I didn't want to go into a gas station for a multitude of reasons, so we were pretty against that. But Cliff wanted to go to the gas station as he had to take a piss as well. So we got up and started walking down the hill, and we were off to the gas station. Now, what Cliff didn't realize was that he forgot to pick up his Pit Viper sunglasses up off the ground before we left. That was a big mistake, and we'll talk about that soon. Anyways, we make it to the sidewalk, and we start booking it down the street, and we cut across to this residential area to walk down some side streets. At this point, I had to take a leak, or else I was gonna piss myself. We made it to this park, which had a baseball field, and I saw this dugout, and it was like my survival instincts kicked in. Mind you, there were people outside their houses. Literally, this was just right off the sidewalk. Tons of activity. But I didn't give a shit. I was like, fuck this, I'm not waiting, I'm pissing in that dugout. So I hurry up and I walk into this dugout, whip out my dick and take the fattest piss of my life. After I'm done, I walked out and I saw they were walking to the left and I waved to them, to meet me on the other side so it didn't look as suspicious to people since it wasn't out of our way to the gas station. So I started walking to the other end of the park and Charlie yelled at me to get my attention. At this point, I realized this dude was actually kind of lacking in the thinking department. That made me so mad because it got so many people's attention. I looked around and people were looking over at us. And I was trying to be rather sneaky about it because I just pissed in the goddamn dugout in public. I became a little sideways at Charlie, and this was one of the first of many times this happened during this very night. Anyways, we continued walking, and Caden and Charlie were kind of navigating through the streets to get to the gas station, but neither of them really knew where to go. I have no clue how this was the case considering this town is so small. It's literally impossible to get lost in. And Caden at least lived there for years, whereas Charlie didn't. So that's understandable why Charlie, didn't really know his way around, but he's definitely been there before, just he never lived there. Lewis and I lived around these neighborhoods pretty much our entire lives, so the routes they took us made literally zero sense. They were the dumbest routes ever. Everybody knows this in their hometown, there's optimal ways to take, whether it's side streets, alleys, stuff like that. There are the best ways to take, whenever you're walking. They did not know shit. They, for some reason, weren't really getting the hint that Lewis and I were trying to tell these three that there is a much better and cooler way to the gas station to avoid happy hour at shenanigans. But they were acting like we weren't there at all. I mean, yeah, we drank, smoked, and did some shrooms, but those things don't take me out of it like maybe they would to other people. I knew my way around easily, but regardless, we got to the main street and we had to cross to get to the gas station on the other side, which is exactly what Lewis and I wanted to avoid because everybody was taking Main Street to get back home after the fireworks. So it was pretty much impossible to cross. But there was this tiny little small window where Cliff, Charlie, and Caden were able to run across. I said, fuck that. Lewis said, fuck that. Meanwhile, Lewis and I were like, fuck that. And we waited probably a good 5 minutes before we were able to cross the street safely. The three that first crossed all went inside to get some refreshments while Lewis and I waited out back. They, of course, were like, oh, what happened? Why didn't you guys cross? We, of course, weren't having it because we all could have just waited, but instead they made us all look like assholes and split the group up. Charlie and Caden were actually acting more fucked up than us three, and they only smoked a little bit. They probably made Cliff look sober in the gas station, I'm telling you. After all that bogus banter, though, we decided that we were all going to just walk around and enjoy the night. So we started aimlessly walking around these neighborhoods for a bit, enjoying ourselves, having a good time. But what I wasn't enjoying was the fact that my shoe was rubbing the back of my foot, which caused a rug burn type wound. This shit hurted, let me tell you. This literally sucked balls, as it kept getting worse and worse as we continued to walk. I literally have bloody shoes. Anyhooters, we were walking for a good 30 minutes before Cliff came to the realization that he lost his pit vipers, and that he remembered he never picked them up from off the hill at the elementary school. So he started to kind of bug out since they were expensive and his girlfriend got him those. So we were all like, well, let's go find him. So we turned around and started to make our way back to the elementary school. Charlie and Caden were failing miserably as trip sitters, as they admitted they were lost. Lewis and I were laughing, like literally this was hysterical. It was one of the funniest things ever. We were laughing amongst ourselves because it's sheerly fucking hilarious you could even get lost in this town, for real. We were only like 5 or 6 streets down from where the gas station was. No joke, it was hilarious, but they just kept walking as if they'd figure it out. I was all like, oh yeah, take a right, go straight, take a left, and there's a park. And Lewis was like, a park? No way! This town has like 6 parks and they're all pretty much close to each other. It's absurd. At this point, I was getting pissed off and was like, how's about instead of you guys leading us to nowhere, I'll take us to this really dope way through the 4-H park. A different park than earlier, mind you. And we'll cut across the main street and go from there. This was much easier on many levels than what we were doing. Out of all of us, me, the person who did the most substances, had to navigate us back to where we needed to go. Unfucking believable. So naturally, I take the lead and we go through the park and finally make it to where we need to cross. I thought I had bad impulse control, but fuck boys. Charlie and Caden take the cake. Once we got to the main street, Caden immediately said, let's just cross, cut behind the gas station, go through this field, and it should lead us back to the school. So Cliff, Charlie, and Caden were immediately on board and ran across the street. They were like little kids, I'm not even kidding. Like, listen guys, this was the dumbest thing that was done all night. We literally could have followed Main Street back to the sidewalk, avoided trespassing, and easily made it back to the elementary school without dicking around with anything else. But they instead decided to make it a huge ordeal that could have been avoided. So Lewis and I booked it across the street as well, and we began to cut through the gas station parking lot, through this field, behind a factory, which led us to this big parking lot. The group kind of got split up a bit, so it was Charlie, Caden, and I in the front, and behind us were Cliff and Lewis. They were like talking, like seriously like 20 feet behind us. So we had to wait for them to catch up to us so we could cross the street that would lead us to the high school. This is where things got even sketchier. So we crossed the street, avoiding going left and hitting the sidewalk and just walking straight to the elementary school. We started walking through this field. It was at this point we got to the high school. To our left was this bus depot and to the right was the high school. As we were walking, we started hearing this noise. Like seriously, it was this like very terrible ominous noise. It basically sounded like a loud doorbell. It felt like I was in Squid Game. Like it sounded like a Squid Game noise, and I felt like I was about to get shot in the head by a sniper. And as we continued walking, the noise started multiplying. Cliff started to freak out a bit and was like, guys, we need to go now. We were all a bit confused until he explained that basically that noise we were hearing was an alarm system set in place that sends out an alert to the cops that there are people trespassing after hours. Now, I totally understand where he was coming from, especially tripping on shrooms. He probably got a little paranoid, but realistically, it wasn't too big of a deal at all, actually. We would have been long gone from the school by the time a cop got around to checking out the area. Although, if we were close enough to school property, a cop could have stopped us and, asked us some questions, who knows what else would have happened. Anyways, we got to the track that's near the high school, and we had a few options. Option A, we cut through the track. The actual gate was still open, but we didn't know if that other side was open. And if it wasn't open, we would have had to climb a fence to get out. So that would have wasted a ton of time. And we could have gotten caught, Then there was option B, which was to go around the track completely and basically end up where we would have been if we would have just went left and walked down that sidewalk I talked about earlier. But nonetheless, we go for option B since there was less risk involved. So we walked to the left of the track and eventually made it to the sidewalk. Cliff, of course, was still freaking out, saying he just wanted to find his pit vipers and go home. The trip sitters were doing a bad job at keeping him at ease, so Lewis and I had to do that for them. Pretty fucking sad, if you ask me. Charlie and Caden at this point were literally just fuck-ups. They couldn't do a damn thing right. It really makes me feel better about myself as a person knowing that I was keeping myself together on multiple substances better than people that hit a dab pen a few times. It was hilarious. Enough with the shade, back to finding Cliff's shades. The sidewalk we were walking out took us right back to where we needed to be, the elementary school. Just to the right of us was the hill we sat upon while watching the fireworks, and we began to look for Cliff's sunglasses. We whipped out our phone flashlights, and Caden finally did something right for once. He actually found Cliff's pit vipers in the flesh unharmed. You know, we were thinking like some kid probably snatched them up or they got stepped on and broken, but a motherfucking miracle happened, and there they were. It literally felt like we just beat life the game. After celebrating and overcoming the sheer shock of finding those bitches, we started to head back to Cliff's car at his parents' house. Cliff decided that he was okay with driving us all back, but did assure us that if we wanted him to pull over, Charlie would take over driving. Cliff handled driving really well, actually. He was driving straight, but his braking and acceleration, of course, were a bit askew. But nonetheless, we eventually made it back to our apartments and chilled out for the rest of the night playing Jackbox games on Cliff's Switch. Y'all ever play Jackbox games? Those are actually pretty fun to play whenever you have a group of people. Anyway, so that's how my 4th of July went. It was pretty damn eventful, and I want to hear about your guys' parties and injuries in the comments below. I'll be sure to read them all. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to join the Little Peter Pack, and I'm out. Peace.